Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, and it is shocking news. Andrew Luck has reportedly informed the Colts that he is going to retire from football. Again, Andrew Luck has informed the Colts that he will retire from the game. Dealing with a high ankle sprain is what has kept him out of the preseason, and Andrew Luck, just 6 seasons into his NFL career, he was a former first-round pick, a first overall pick in 2012, and Andrew Luck is calling it a career. He missed all of 2017 with a shoulder injury. He came back last season, won Comeback Player of the Year, and now he has decided to call it quits. For immediate reaction, we now welcome in CBS Sports NFL writer Tyler Sullivan. And Tyler, when I first heard this news, a couple of expletives came out of my mouth like, holy, you know what, Andrew Luck retiring. What say you here?
Yeah, well, I thought I was getting baited on Twitter. I thought that this was a fake account. You know, that is the type of news that we're looking at here with Andrew Luck calling it a career with the Indianapolis Colts. And ultimately, you know, my first kind of reaction after just the utter shock of Andrew Luck walking away is the questions of the Colts, maybe medical staff, and certainly what is going on with Andrew Luck and his relationship with the Colts. He's already reportedly met with ownership saying that his decision is to walk away from the NFL, and you have to wonder if it's stemming from a potential distrust with the medical staff or something along those lines. Obviously, as you referenced, that 2017 shoulder injury, kind of just an utter mess, ending his season. And it kind of had the feelings with this ankle injury this year that things were going to be the same. They were holding out Jacoby Brissett at the preseason game on Saturday night. So it kind of felt like they were kind of preparing themselves to not have Andrew Luck for the start of the year. And now it looks like, or it is apparent, that they're not going to have Andrew Luck at all as he's walking away from the NFL.
I guess I just don't understand this. If it's a high ankle sprain, it's got to be more than that. There's got to be a bigger reason from walking away from the game because of a high ankle sprain. Why give it up? I mean, I guess I'm just super confused here. I mean, he's 29 years old. He played 6 seasons in the NFL, missed 2017. There's got to be a bigger reason than a high ankle sprain for the reason for you to retire.
There's no question, and there, you know, there's already reports out there. ESPN's Adam Schefter saying and kind of noting mentally spent. I think that that's a key word to look at in that report, and I think that that's what we're looking at here. I don't know if it's just the high ankle sprain or the ankle injury, whatever we want to specifically call it, because we don't necessarily know. Maybe it's even something worse that's being mismanaged. You know, you just don't know in these situations. We'll certainly find out more in the coming days and maybe even in the coming hours here. But I think the mentally spent aspect of the report is something to keep an eye on here. As we referenced, that 2017 shoulder injury that kind of kept him out. He's all of a sudden the comeback player of the year last year, and then all of a sudden it feels like things are kind of unraveling once again with that ankle injury. I kind of wonder if that's the case here. And like you said, it's just utterly shocking to see Andrew Luck walk away here. I mean, we're not talking about just another #1 overall pick and, you know, obviously, you know, a highly touted quarterback. We're talking about a guy coming out of Stanford that was looked at as the highly touted quarterback of his generation. I mean, we were talking about this guy like he's John Elway. I mean, this is the kind of status that we were putting him in, and really was producing right out of the gate there, obviously making to the AFC Championship with the Colts. You know, so there is a guy that is not only just immensely talented, highly touted coming into the league, but he produced, and he was a cornerstone, or we thought he was going to be a cornerstone for the Indianapolis Colts in the post-Peyton Manning era. And now it just seems like this whole thing's been mismanaged. And ultimately, if this is the end of Andrew Luck, well, this is just one utter waste of a promising, potentially Hall of Fame career here.
He was Comeback Player of the Year last year. This year, he's not coming back. He retires from the NFL. You see the list of injuries here he's dealt with in his career. What's going to be the legacy then of Andrew Luck? How are you going to remember his time spent in the NFL?
Well, I think it's one of those things where you quote the Bronx Tale. There's nothing worse than wasted talent. And I think that this is what you're going to remember Andrew Luck as. Like I said, you know, he was the LeBron James coming out of Stanford, going into the NFL draft. I mean, we were looking at him as the guy to tank for. Obviously, that's what the Indianapolis Colts did. If you were going to do it with any guy, it was Andrew Luck. he came in and produced right out of the gate, and then just injuries kind of unraveled his career here. So to me, it's just a waste of talent here. And you can blame anybody. You can blame, the Colts. You could blame, Andrew Luck, maybe just not sticking it out. Who knows? But to me, I think just an overall snapshot of his career is a big what if. What if he stayed healthy? What if those injuries were better managed? Could we be looking at a guy who was supposed to carry the torch from Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, that era of quarterbacks, and bring us into this new wave to be that stopgap for the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Carson Wentz in this new era? He should have been that guy that was kind of being the face of the NFL, or at least had the potential to be the face of the NFL. And as we're standing here today, I still can't believe it, but he is not going to be that because he is walking away from the league.
It's wild to think here that Andrew Luck was going to miss week 1 of the regular season, and now he's going to miss the whole season because he's calling it a career. Much more here on CBS Sports HQ. Again, breaking news, Andrew Luck has informed the Colts that he is going to retire from the game of football. Keep it locked on CBS Sports HQ. This breaking news continues after the break. Back here on CBS Sports HQ, following the breaking news, which is absolutely shocking news, Andrew Luck has informed the Colts that he will retire from the game of football. Dealing with a high ankle injury this preseason, got to be much more than that if you're retiring from the game, walking away. We know, of course, he was the comeback player of the year last year after missing all of 2017 with a shoulder injury, had offseason shoulder surgery, comes back, has a great season, and now Andrew Luck's not coming back this season. We welcome in our NFL experts, Pete Prisco and fantasy expert Jamie Eisenberg. And Pete, I'll come to you first here. Your first reaction, Andrew Luck retiring.
Wow, wow, wow. But, and I will say this, because this has been something that's been around the league for a long time, that Andrew Luck is one of those guys that has interest outside of the game. He's always been that quarterback who loves to get away from the game and spend time doing a lot of other things. He has a lot of varied interests. So, look, it's surprising. He's had a ton of injuries. I get it. It's frustrating to go through them time and time again. I'm shocked, but a little part of me understands a little bit of it.
Pete, there's got to be more to this then, right? You mentioned that he's got other things maybe outside of football, but it can't just be a high ankle injury and I'm calling it a career.
No, I don't think he's retiring from the injury. I think he's retiring from the process and the entire get back to where you were once, and you come through your shoulder surgery and then you have more injuries, and you look, and you look at your family and you say, can I go through this again? Do I want to go through it again? Is it worth all the aggravation? Is it worth the grind? Is it worth the risk? So I think that's where he's coming from that standpoint. I don't know that for a fact. I'm speculating, but that's what I imagine that would be. I mean, look, he's walking away. He's going to have to pay back $12 million in bonus money. So it's costing him a lot of money to do so. But obviously this is something he's thought about. It's something that doesn't just pop up. That means it's probably been in his mind going through training camp and everything else. So, look, it's a shock. It's a real stunner, and it's crippling to the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, Pete, I just want to piggyback off something you said. You're trying to, obviously digest all this information. And so Zach Kiefer of The Athletic is tweeting about how Andrew Luck said when he had the shoulder injury that how miserable he was as a human being, and said he had to go to a really dark place to sort of come back from that. And I'm sure this factors into that. Dealing with this injury, it's probably more than we know. The loose bone is, what Jim Irsay said, the owner of the Colts, it's probably something that's bothering him. The calf is clearly not just a calf strain. It's probably just an injury that he does not feel that he could come back to be the same player, and he doesn't want to go through that process of having to sit out multiple games and let his team down. And like Pete said, has multiple interests that he can walk away from this personally and still be okay. It's got to be something that just has been on his mind dealing with this injury, because remember, he's been dealing with this injury since May. This isn't just a training camp injury. This isn't something where he got, hurt in a game recently. This has been something since May, and who knows, even before then, keeping him out of minicamp. So it's absolutely shocking, but I'm sure Andrew Luck has given it a lot of thought. I don't think he's the type of person that makes an abrupt decision like this.
Yeah, what's shocking too, Jamie and Pete, is he's only 29 years old. I mean, he could certainly play for several more years. 6 years in the NFL, of course, he missed 2017. Pete, when you look at his career as a whole, what is his legacy going to be? How's he going to be remembered for his time with the Indianapolis Colts and in the NFL?
A tease, because I don't think we ever really got to see how good he could have been. I think we saw bits and pieces of him, and we never got the great Andrew Luck that we expected to see. There were moments, there were many magical moments, and he had a chance to be truly special, but I don't think we'll ever truly get to appreciate what he could have been as a quarterback in the National Football League. He was a fun guy to watch. He was special when he played. There were a lot of injuries. There were a lot of moments where we sat back and said, we wonder if he'll ever be the same guy coming off that shoulder surgery. So for me, it's a tease. It was a tease for a long time. Now it's a major disappointment. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. Did he really, truly love the game? Because sometimes when a guy steps back from this, at this age, at 29 years old, did he really, truly love the game? Because if you're going to be a great, great quarterback in this league, you have to love it.
Yeah, it's a great question. Did he really love the game? Did he really want to be in the NFL, go through the grind? You can't blame him with all the injuries, but certainly with a lot of potential still for his career. Going to be 30 in September. And you remember, Jamie, last season when he had those 8 straight games of 3 or more passing touchdowns, which is second all-time to only Tom Brady, who had 10 straight in 2007. I mean, the production that he put up was incredible. And now you look in terms of what they've got in Indianapolis. It's Jacoby Brissett. What are you doing at this point if you're Indianapolis?
I think they feel okay. It's not Andrew Luck, clearly. It's not going to be the same type of offense and the same potential of being as an explosive team. But this was a team that's been building in the trenches. You know, they go and they revamp this offensive line over the last couple of years. And Brissett's had the opportunity now with an entire offseason to practice as the guy. And I think he's going to be dramatically better than what we saw in 2017 when he was thrown into it at the last minute after the Colts made the trade with the Patriots to get him to replace Andrew Luck. So you heard all offseason, before we knew this was anything remotely a possibility of them not having Andrew Luck, we're not trading Jacoby Brissett. We love Jacoby Brissett. We value him. And I think, as you saw in that second preseason game, struggled in the first drive, came back in the second drive, leads them to a touchdown with Eric Ebron. There's a ton of talent on this team. The defense was going to be better. And the offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. I also think Marlon Mack could be one of the better running backs in the NFL. So when you have T.Y. Hilton and Eric Ebron, adding Devin Funchess and Paris Campbell, there's a lot to like about this Colts team. Now, they're not going to be the best team in the division. They're probably competing for third. But that still doesn't mean they can't compete for a wild card spot and still be a very good team. They're just not going to be as great with Andrew Luck not being there and Jacoby Brissett as the replacement.
So, Jamie, I'll stay there with you in terms of the fantasy impact, because now this is going to have a major impact on Eric Ebron and T.Y. Hilton and Marlon Mack. So when you take a look at that, how do you factor all that in with Andrew Luck retiring?
It's a downgrade. You know, it can't be anything but. You know, so T.Y. Hilton goes from a number 1 receiver to a, you know, still a high-end number 2, but a guy you're going to take in that round 4, round 5 range. Marlon Mack gets downgraded from a potential number 1 running back to still a number 2 guy, but outside of the top 15. Again, I think he falls to round 4. I was already down on Eric Ebron to begin with, so this is an easy way to fade him just a little bit more. So he's still a number 1 tight end, but he's at the back end of that group, and you can debate, certainly so, guys like Vance McDonald and Mark Andrews and Darren Waller and Jimmy Graham and whoever you want to throw up there to be better than Eric Ebron. I'm not going to fight you. If you don't want to take him as a starter, go ahead, because he wasn't going to replicate the 14 total touchdowns anyway. So he's an easy guy to avoid if you want to. And then the rest of the guys were not really fantasy starters. So Devin Funchess, Paris Campbell, they're going to lose, but they're going to be guys that probably don't get drafted. So I still think you're drafting T.Y. Hilton and Marlon Mack as starters. You just downgrade them from potential superstars to now more mid-range type of guys, but still guys that can help your fantasy roster.
Pete, how does this Colts roster handle this? Because I kind of compare this to, like, hey, you're at your work, you're at your job, and let's say your boss retires, or maybe the CEO retires, or maybe a close friend retires, or something like that, and you're kind of shook for a little bit, but then it's like, okay, we got to move forward, and it's next man up.
Well, you have to. I mean, and that's the cruel reality of not only the NFL, but life, as you just mentioned. And I can tell you endless stories of star players who have been hurt out for a season, and they were the star of stars, and they walk through the locker room during that same season, and they're almost cast-offs. They're not paid attention to because they're forgotten. They're not on the team anymore. And once you're not on the team anymore, you move on, and guys roll on. They will rally around Jacoby Brissett. This roster is much better than it was the last time he played in Indianapolis. I think he'll be better. I just think that when you have a guy like Andrew Luck who can raise up an entire team and carry a team when things aren't going well, Jacoby Brissett can't do that. They are going to miss that.
Do you at all compare this situation to Calvin Johnson when he walked away from the Lions?
Well, I mean, there's been other guys, Barry Sanders, Jim Brown, they all walked away early in their careers. This one is a little bit different from my standpoint. I mean, Jim Brown wanted to go make movies. He was tired of playing football. He wanted to go make movies and become a Hollywood star. He did. Barry Sanders tired of the game. And I think if he looks back on it, he probably regretted leaving a little early. Calvin Johnson, I think he had just tired of the whole process and wanted to get out of Detroit and, losing. So for me, I think this is more of a shock because this is a quarterback. Quarterbacks are supposed to play into their almost 40s now. We're seeing 40s the new 30 for quarterbacks. I was just talking to Drew Brees about that the other day. You have, Brady at 43, Eli Manning, Rivers, Roethlisberger, they're all playing into their mid-30s. And here's a guy stepping away at the age of 29. So it's different because he's not a position player. He doesn't get beat up a lot, although he's had a lot of injuries. So from my standpoint, this is shocking. It says to me, I wonder if Andrew Luck ever truly loved the game of football. He was a star. He was a prodigy. His dad played in the league. His dad was around the game for a long time, and he was part of it, and I know he enjoyed the process. But for me, deep down, I wonder if he ever truly loved the game.
Colts were the favorites to win the AFC South this season. Pete, how does this change this?
Look, it's not like, and me and Jamie have talked about this ad nauseum. A couple years ago when the Jaguars won the division, Luck was out, right? They had problems in Houston. They had all kinds of issues in Tennessee. Things fell into line for the Jaguars. They played great defense, and they found their way into the championship game. This season is no different. The Texans lost Lamar Miller tonight. Their offensive line is a disaster. The Colts don't have Andrew Luck. The Titans have quarterback issues with Mariota. And all of a sudden you look at Jacksonville, the defense is loaded up. You saw that the other night. Josh Allen's going to add a pass rusher to that unit. They're going to be very, very good. And Nick Foles, much better quarterback than Blake Bortles was. I think the division right now is Jacksonville's to lose.
There you have it. Perhaps the Jaguars, who went 5-11 last season, go from worst to first, all because Andrew Luck has decided to retire from football. And we're also getting word that Lamar Miller tore his ACL, so he'll be out for a very long time. Would expect him back till late in the season. But the big story here, Andrew Luck has retired from the NFL, informing the Colts of a decision on this day. Top of the hour here, we will continue with this breaking news. Brady Quinn coming up. We'll get a quarterback's perspective on walking away from the game in terms of Andrew Luck and his decision to call it a career. Keep it locked here on CBS Sports HQ. We will keep you posted. We'll keep covering this breaking news. Again, Andrew Luck has retired from the NFL. Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Andrew Luck has informed the Colts of his decision to retire from the game of football. Shocking news. He turns 30 in September, played 6 seasons in the NFL, missed all of 2017 because of a shoulder injury, came back in 2018 and was the comeback player of the year. 2015, dealt with an abdominal tear, lacerated kidney, concussion in 2016, shoulder surgery in 2017. And he's been dealing with this high ankle injury since back in OTAs and has just continued to nag him. And at this point, you have to wonder, really the real reason that Andrew Luck is walking away. Is it because of the injuries? Is it because of the grind? Is it because he just wants to be done with all of it? Well, the comeback player of the year is not coming back. He has informed the Colts that he will retire from football. Let's welcome in CBS Sports NFL analyst Pete Prisco and CBS Sports NFL draft expert and fantasy expert Jamie Eisenberg here. And Pete, I'll come to you first here. When I first heard the news and got wind of the news, I said, "Are we being punked here?" Was my first reaction. We found out that it was in fact real. It was a real report. I'm shocked right now. Your reaction, I'm sure, is the same.
Oh, very shocked. I mean, it's just when a guy walks away in the prime of his career and you're one of the top quarterbacks in the National Football League, obviously you're going to be shocked. Now, he's been through an awful lot. And that's what makes it, some people look at it and say he's been through so much with the shoulder surgery and all these other injuries he had. That's why he's walking away. But going through what he did and getting through it, getting back on the field last year and performing at a high level, you would think that he had gotten through some of the tough stuff. And, he had gone to some bad places, as we've read in many spots, of when he was fighting through that injury. But he did make it back. And now he had another injury. Maybe he's just tired of the grind, tired of the entire process of trying to fight through these injuries. He's one of those guys that has a lot of interest outside of football, and maybe he just wants to get away from the game.
Jamie, what do you make of the whole situation here? I mean, Andrew Luck calls it a career on a Saturday when we hear that Jacoby Brissett is being held out of the game.
I think it's got to be something that's worse with his leg than they're letting on. And, this is something that he doesn't feel that he could play through and play at the same level. As Pete alluded to, some of the things that you're hearing about how Andrew Luck dealt with the shoulder injury and missing the season and how that impacted him from a personal standpoint, that he went to a quote-unquote dark place. I think he just doesn't want to go there again. It's got to be, something that's so debilitating to him physically, emotionally, mentally, that he doesn't feel that he could come back from and be the same player, and he doesn't want to be on the field having to go through that. So, look, it's tough. It's frustrating. Like you said, Akeem, I think the best word is shocking. We're all sitting here watching the start of college football, watching the third week of preseason action, and you're getting news like this. It almost feels like you said, like you had to go and check. It was from ESPN's Adam Schefter. Was it really him or was it a fake account? And so now you're getting that it's going to be a press conference tomorrow. Jacoby Brissett's going to be their guy, and you just have to move forward if you're the Colts. It's absolutely 100% shocking in reality. It's 1,000% shocking in fantasy. He was still being drafted as the #1 guy, and that's no longer the case, clearly.
Pete, he had said back in 2017 about the whole shoulder injury, he was scared for his life in terms of that he wouldn't play football again. He was scared to my core, was the quote. Sad, miserable human. When you put that into context and now having to go through this high ankle injury, just didn't want to deal with it again or go through the grind again, perhaps.
Maybe. Again, when you're rehabbing an injury, and if you're a quarterback and you can't throw the football and you don't know if you're going to be able to throw the football again, obviously you're going to go to some dark places if the game means that much to you. But this is different. This is a weird injury. This is, they've been very quiet and deceptive about this injury. So for me, this is different because what is the injury? Is it an ankle? Is it a calf? What is it? And why can't he go back out there and play football? It's not his arm. It's not his shoulder. So he's a quarterback. He should be able to play. So for me, this is a little bit different than what he went through to try and get back onto the field recovering from shoulder surgery. I just think the entire process, he probably stepped back and realized, look, this is a grind, season in and season out. I'm 29 years old. I have a life outside of football, a lot of things outside of football, and maybe it's just not worth it to him.
All right, let's bring in CBS Sports NFL analyst and former NFL quarterback Brady Quinn. Brady, Andrew Luck is retiring. Your reaction to the news?
Shocking and disappointed. I think shocking from the standpoint that, we've been told that he's been dealing with a high ankle sprain that's impacting his calf. He's been dealing with it for quite some time. This is obviously after he's dealt with multiple injuries over the course of his career, but none really seemingly that severe. We saw him play at a really, really high level last year through 39 touchdown passes. That was second in the league to Patrick Mahomes, the MVP. And I think a lot of people have him pegged with the additions they made on this roster at being a potential MVP candidate this year, and maybe it's a team to compete with the Patriots in the AFC. So, I know he's dealt with some injuries in the past, but it's been a very short career. And he, for him, he's still played at a relatively high level, and they haven't been serious injuries we're talking about. So it comes as shocking from that standpoint, and then disappointing because, look, when this young man first stepped on the field in Palo Alto in California for Stanford as a freshman, people had deemed him the next great prospect. Now they're looking at Trevor Lawrence at Clemson like that. And that's where, when you're looking back at what he was when he first got into the league and why the Colts, for example, moved on from Peyton Manning, a future Hall of Famer who'd done so much for the Colts organization, to basically pave the way for Andrew Luck. Now looking back on it, maybe they should have been more patient with Peyton. Maybe they would have had more success with Peyton, and instead of the Broncos winning a Super Bowl that he eventually, brought to them, maybe it would have been the Colts that would have ended up working out that way. Who knows? But I think disappointing for that reason, because you're never really able to see, what this young man's career could have been, and if he was going to be kind of that next great quarterback to take over for the Tom Brady's and Aaron Rodgers of the league, because he's that type of talent. So shocked and then disappointing is really the only way to put it.
I know how much you love the game of football, and my question to you is, do you think that Andrew Luck truly loved the game of football?
I don't know. I'm not going to try to answer that. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm a little frustrated. I'm someone who dealt with, multiple concussions, a back injury, a Liz Frank injury, more serious injuries, and I would have done anything to continue to keep playing. I mean, heck, I signed a terrible contract my 8th year with the Miami Dolphins just to go to training camp, and it was really just to get a chance to go back in and play. And, he's obviously drafted in a different position and is financially incredibly secure, so I'm sure this makes this decision a little bit easier. But that's the thing about when you're going out looking at prospects, you're looking at players that come out of college is, you can grade the film, you can grade their talent and ability, you can't measure the heart. And there needs to be an explanation for this, not only to just general fans out there, but definitely Colts fans, but his teammates and everyone else who's poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this upcoming season, expecting him to be the guy. Because it just seems like it's come at a terrible time. And unless there's a bigger reason to all of this, it seems that, maybe he didn't. At least that's going to be the perception on the outside.
How do you think the Colts teammates and Andrew Luck's now former teammates are reacting to this?
Well, I think Jacoby Brissett knows it's his team now, right? And he would have been a highly sought-after free agent quarterback after this year anyway. I really do think the way he handled his first season with Indianapolis when he got traded to the Colts, and being able to allow them to still be competitive, considering he didn't know the offense and just got there, told you a lot about his ability. I mean, obviously, the New England Patriots drafted this young man, and they're one of the best at evaluating, that particular position. So, I think that gave you a little bit of sense of it, but he should be ready. Outside of that, I'm sure they're shocked as well. I mean, maybe they saw signs of it in the locker room. Maybe they didn't. I think most people would think, okay, maybe there's an operation coming. He goes on IR, misses the year, or has to miss a significant amount of time, something like that. Not retiring, not at 29 years old, and at a position where, let's just be honest, from a financial standpoint, he'd still be able to sign a very lucrative contract again that would extend him into his mid-late 30s. I mean, we see quarterbacks now playing in their 40s. And he's a big athletic guy. Again, I know he's dealt with injuries like we talked about, but at the same time, you'd think that the way he takes care of himself and all that, he'd be able to withstand all of it. So I would think some of his teammates are going to be ticked off, to be honest with you. And they'll probably be frustrated and mad. And there'll be some others who are disappointed, probably some others who feel for him. But trust me, there's a lot of people in the Colts organization, in the state of Indiana, and just in general Colts fans who are going to be let down by this decision, because they know now that, going to Jacoby Brissett, I'm not saying that he can't go in there and help them maybe compete one day to win a Super Bowl. With Andrew Luck, you always felt like there was a shot at that. And now, obviously, that's not a reality.
Andrew Luck went 53-33 as a starter over 6 seasons in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. And Brady, how are you going to remember his playing days in the NFL and with the Colts?
That's a great question. I would have to say, again, just thinking about it at this current moment, flashes of brilliance. And that's kind of it. And people, again, will point to some of the injuries. The shoulder injury was one in which, and I had heard from a couple of different people, he maybe could have came back that season and finished it out towards the end, but the team wasn't in a good spot, which, the addition of Quentin Nelson has helped, and obviously some of the other offensive linemen solidify that front for him, where they were really good last year. But there was a certain degree of, what was the point of coming back? The team's not ready, and they're not playing for anything at that point in time of the year. And maybe that should have been foreshadowing the fact that maybe he doesn't love the game, and he, ended up taking off more time than he really needed to when it was all said and done, just so that his team would be in a better position to help him be competitive. But I think flashes of brilliance, and that's kind of it. I mean, I guess part of me is hoping this story isn't done. Part of me is hoping that he'll eventually change his mind. I feel like it'd be a lot of God-given talent that would be wasted if unless there's something serious going on right now from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, he turns 30 in September, and you talked about his flashes of brilliance. He had 8 straight games last season of 3 or more passing touchdowns, second most in NFL history, behind only Tom Brady, who had 10 straight games of 3 or more passing touchdowns back in 2007. Andrew Luck walking away from the game. Perspective here from Brady Quinn on CBS Sports HQ. Brady, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.